Can y'all hear me okay? Yep. That's good. My ears are all plugged up. I can't hear jack. So I'm starting to be more and more like an old man. I'm like, could you speak up? Oh my God. It's nuts. My name is Chris Raymer. Very grateful, recovered alcoholic. I get rid of that cough drop. I'm delighted to get to do this. I live in Ingram, Texas. I travel a bunch. I'm not there a whole bunch, but that's where I live. And my buddy Jerry asked me to do this ages ago, and how cool it is that I get to share a podium with a guy that I've known forever. And I hope I don't embarrass him, because this is his home turf, and so we don't want to do that. But this will be a cool deal, fast and furious, as they say. I want to make sure before we get started. I know some of y'all will be here part day and y'all leave this afternoon, and some of you will have other ones come in and they won't get this little piece. But I want to make sure y'all kind of understand where I'm coming from. I got sober finally in 1987, and if I don't do anything stupid, I'll have 29 years in November. And but I was 7 years in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous before. I'm what some of y'all in here that have had trouble staying sober, buddy, can I relate to? So I know I have a few acquaintances that just picked up one desire chip, but we're not real close. I don't have much in common with those folks. I don't know. I was just a fiend. I was just crazy, and I had a lot of other stuff going on. But when I finally got sober in '87, it's part of my story, and I want to talk a little bit about that. I had some guys sit down with me after a meeting. I tried to commit suicide, and I was just done, guys. I wish I could explain kind of how. I've been to AA for 7 years. I'm a meeting maker, make it kind of guy. I hate it, and that's people were pinching me on the cheek and telling me all you got to do is come to meetings, and I'm going to meetings. I mean, I'm watching you stay sober, but I can't stay sober, and I'm frustrated as I can be. And there's going to be a prevailing thread through these discussions today, around that idea of this mixed messages that we hear in Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I got to say, going in the door here, guys, if I say something that you don't agree with, that's just so okay. I mean, and you don't have to come up at break and explain to me how I'm wrong. You can, I don't know. I mean, we're in West Texas. I just might as well, you can bite me. I don't care. I don't know what to tell you. Guys, I'm not here to argue with you. I'm here to share one thing and one thing only, and that's my experience. I've been doing it for a long time from the podiums, folks, all over the world, and this is what I do. And it'd be stupid for me to come down here and just try to entertain you. Y'all gave up a whole Saturday to come in here and do this. I want to share some of my thoughts about the big book and what happened to me. And if my story's different than your story, that's just so cool. I say this all the time, and if we're speaking from the podium, it's like we ask the little newcomer coming in. We want you to be open-minded and willing to. We want you to be really open-minded when you get here. But after you're sober about 5 years, you can just slam the door, buddy. Nothing new information's never going to get in there because it's... Well, y'all follow? I mean, I hear it all the time. Well, my sponsor says, well, my counselor said, guys, I'm not coming from, my big book says. That's all I'm coming from. This is the stuff that saved my life, and I'll tell you going in the door, if I'm saying something and your sponsor's sitting right next to you and he's saying something completely different, your sponsor's right. Just keep listening. That's... See, I was lucky enough early on when I finally got sober in '87, I was lucky enough to get hold of some sponsorship that was pretty connected to our original founders. And there was a lot of information out there about doing the work and actually having a thing called a spiritual experience. There was There's a guy named Don Pritz. He's been dead a long time, and a lot of you guys out here in West Texas knew him. He spoke at every conference out here, and he was a good friend of mine. He was in my little sponsorship lineage, but he passed away a bunch of years ago. But you could listen to some of his talks. He talked about it on more than one speak. I bet he's got copies of it. His last talk that he ever did, he said it again if you want to snag it. But he talks about at some point in our recovery history, we stopped looking at this thing. We started focusing more on sobriety than we did on recovery. It all became about not drinking one stupid day at a time instead of let's have a spiritual experience and have a complete psychic change so our lives will change. Everybody started walking on tiptoes around the atheist and walking around tiptoes, and they started presenting this like it was some kind of a self-help program. Alcoholics Anonymous is not a self-help program, never has been, never will be. This is a spiritual program of action. And if you take those actions, even if you don't believe in God, you're going to get taken to a place you've never been to ever. It's a pretty cool thing, folks. Not only have I not drank in 28 years, I have not wanted to drink in 28 years. I stand in front of you introducing myself as a recovered alcoholic. I am not recovering. We'll talk about that some today too. Guys, I've been relieved of the obsession to use. And not once have I wanted to take a drink in all those years. I'm as recovered as I'm going to get. And I think a whole bunch of us out there need to start taking a stand with that and start sharing that with the people that we work with. My book tells me to introduce myself to the newcomer as a person who has been recovered. Ba-da-bum. I'm just throwing that out there. The simple fact that I said that made you cranky. So that's okay too. Where's my glasses? In 1987, how can I do this? I don't want to take too much time with it. I was raised in the hill country. I was born out in Odessa, and my father was a printer out there and published a drilling magazine. And we moved. I was about 11 years old. I was in a rock fight. That's when I lost this eye out there. I mean, there's plenty of rocks in Odessa. What can I say? And so but it was a rock fight that I picked at 11 years old. I could have used a shot of whiskey at 11. You know, I'm still convinced if I'd had a little vodka, I'd have had 2 eyes today. You know, because I was looking for something to change the way I felt. You know, and a rock fight would do it at 11 years old. And anyway, I didn't duck fast enough, but. We moved to the hill country, and my father was a drinker, and he was one of the kindest, sweetest men you'd ever come across, and alcohol got him eventually, and wonderful man. But my twin brother and I caught this bullet. I'll throw this out there now, and again, I need to tell you the perspective I'm coming from. I've worked in treatment centers for I don't know 23 years, and I get to see a lot of misinformation disseminated out there about recovery through these facilities sometimes, and but there's one thing that's unarguable. It used to be arguable is whether this was genetic or not. Guys, the jury's in on this. There is such a big, strong genetic predisposition to alcoholism and drug addiction. It's not even funny. It's just like depression. It's like schizophrenia. You guys, this is genetic. If you happen to have any North American Indian blood in you, you could be president of Alcoholics Anonymous soon. That is not a dig. That's just an absolute fact. So I do. So I'll throw that out there to you. My twin brother and I caught the bullet. My little sister and I got a half sister that didn't catch the bullet. Raised in the same family, no goofy stuff. Front row of the Baptist church every time the doors were open. We were, great family. We didn't have a lot of money looking back at it, but hell, nobody did at the time, seemed like. And so there was just nothing weird going on. My father drank, and my twin brother and I, we caught the genetic bullet. And we started drinking in high school. We were off to the races. I'll never forget sitting up next to one of them big old cypress trees and drinking a bottle of Boone's Farm apple wine. I know, back there's big, feel the love. I know. Guys, I know for a fact that stuff's never seen a grape, and you can hallucinate on it, I'm telling you that. So, it was pretty good. Anyway, don't spill it. It won't come out of anything. I'm just remember that. But I remember walking back across the field that night. I drank one of them little bottles, and I shared it with a buddy. And I didn't get drunk. I didn't rob a liquor store. I didn't take my clothes off. I didn't do anything. I just, I remember thinking, this is why my dad drinks. I understand now. This is not, And I was to drink for, the next 17 years. I had a little window, just like so many of y'all. I was like a functioning alcoholic. I was a party animal. I just thought it was because I was from Texas, and that's what we did. We're kind of a cut above most folks. And if you ain't from around here, I'm sorry, but that's a fact. That's got nothing to do with alcoholism. I'm just going to throw that out there. But I was successful. I mean, I started cooking in the hill country as a little apprentice and went to Houston and got pretty successful there. I was pretty talented, pretty quick. Most of the little alcoholics and dope fiends I know are pretty damn talented. When you take that other stuff away, we're pretty sharp. And I was no exception. And I was quite successful for long periods of time, folks. And in and out, in and out. In the mid-'70s, I started seeing doctors for depression. I'm drinking a whole bunch, and I know it's probably causing me some problems, but I'm not causing a lot of crap in my life. I'm doing pretty well, but the depression's kicking my butt. Of course, we didn't know that depression was the number one symptom of untreated alcoholism. When I drink, the depression goes away, at least for a short period of time. When I stop drinking, that's when the stuff hits the fan. Could y'all all get on that same page? We may ask y'all some questions, but y'all got to understand that, because there's too many people believe that my drinking is causal. I got this little guy up here, a little issue man I've always used as a little teaching tool. This is y'all, okay? Yeah, pretty much. I know. But he's a happy little bastard. All right, here. But you see, I started seeing a counselor and therapist for a whole bunch of. I mean, I got a pocket full of money. I'm a big shot chef in Houston, and but I'm trying to figure out the problem. Of course, they're giving me medications and all this kind of stuff and helping me out, and I've benefited from all of that. I'm not knocking any of that, but what they're trying to do is they're trying to change all this external stuff. Chris, you're drinking because of this. You're drinking because of that. Like I said, I've been in the industry treatments for a bunch of years, and I'll sit down with a family member, and they'll start asking, well, why does he drink? Well, because he's an alcoholic. Oh, yes, I know. I'm just so glad. That makes so much sense. Alcoholism. Yeah. But why does he drink? Nobody's buying that. Nobody's buying that. So your families do not understand why we do it. They'll play. Yeah, it's important to us, but y'all, they're still looking for something to change out here. Yeah. Now listen, because we're going to dovetail into it here in this next 30 minutes. There are drinkers out there whose drinking is caused by this. If I don't say anything else today that'll upset some of you, this is. I'm right here at it right now, because a lot of you guys have got it pigeonholed that this is why you're drinking. And I'm just going to say, if this is why you're drinking, quit. Go away. Do some good therapy on it. Y'all follow? We see it all the time. They do some good therapy. Oh my gosh, that's right. I was adopted and that's why I drank. Okay, that's fine. Now we do the good therapy on it. You're past that. Y'all follow? If you're still drinking, then it wasn't the adoption. That it might have affected you, and we need to look at it. Y'all follow? I'm not making light of anybody. Good God, the stuff that we carry around from the time we're born, and I mean, it's crazy stuff, what life is thrown at us. God, I'm not going to make light of any of that. I'm just saying that the illness is biological. You either got it or you don't. I've treated too many millionaires. I've treated too many movie actors, too many high-profile people, y'all, men, women, black, white, gay, straight. Dr. Silkworth in the early days, when he was a neurologist at Towns Hospital all those years, he was one of the first doctors out there that started seeing the similarities between the diagnoses of alcoholism. He was getting the little gutter bums coming in off the street. He was getting the Park Avenue socialites off the street. He started seeing the same symptoms. It doesn't matter how much money they had in their pocket. If they have the symptoms we're going to talk about in a minute, they're us. The problem is we got a whole bunch of people out there that are not us, that don't need to work the steps and don't need to have a spiritual experience. And I'm not saying they're not welcome. Come on. Just don't talk so much. That's all. I got 87 after the suicide attempt. I finally got married and went to North Texas. A counselor told me if I'd get married and put some roots down, I didn't stay sober. It had nothing to do with her. And I used to sit in that parking lot. God, if you could just get me out of that kitchen, everything would be okay. If I could just buy that barbecue restaurant, everything would be okay. Some of y'all are in here, right? If I could just marry that woman, if I could just shoot that woman, everything would be okay. If I just go to the gym, if I could just do this, if I could just do that. God, every time I sat down on a therapist couch, they want to talk about this being blind in one eye. We would talk about Vietnam. I've never been to Vietnam, but we talked about it. We talked a lot about being gay. We talked a lot about being gay. Jerry's gay. I'm not. And there ain't nothing wrong about that at all. I'm just trying to say that's not the problem. It's just, y'all follow. I'm just uncomfortable inside. I picked up a stack of return checks. I got to a place where I couldn't cook anymore. I couldn't stand that long. And my twin brother gave me a job in a book bindery. Had a big old bindery up in Dallas, Louisville, Texas. And I got to work for him. And thank God for family. I'd have been on the street. And I'm still going to say this. I've never been fired from a job. I quit a bunch of them, but I've never been fired. And working for him, and I picked up a stack of return checks one day and went to my little apartment, realized I'd bankrupted another checking account and bounced another rent check. And guys, I'm 35 years old, and I hate my life. Y'all understand? There's no little happy thought for me. There's no woman in my life. I'm driving an old beat-up pickup truck. I'm living in an apartment that my sister-in-law co-signed for me to get into, and I'm living from paycheck to paycheck. I mean, sure, there's got to be something more than this in life. I can stop for short periods of time, folks, but I can't stay stopped. I sat naked in churches, like teepees. I literally, sweat lodges too. I've dipped, dunked, neutered, and spayed trying to stay sober. I was talking to a mama the other day. He said, well, if he'd just go back to church, he'd be okay. Buddy, I don't know how to tell you. We've treated way too many preachers out there. This has got no reflection on the church. Belief in God is not the same as access to God. It's completely different. This illness, it's like saying, I won't have diabetes if I go back to church. It's just, no, you've got to change your diet and get off your ass. Oh, that, no. Y'all follow? It's the same thing. Going to take a pile of pills and heard a voice that said, don't do this, go back, and had some conversation with the voice, and I made a commitment the next day I was going to go back to Alcoholics Anonymous, and the next day I did. I went to a doctor. I'd made myself sick, and the next day I went to a doctor and got some doggy downers, and I'm going to detox hard. There's no money left for treatment. No money. I've done that. I'm done. I can't go back. And I ended up in this AA meeting I'd never been to before. And there it was in Louisville, and I knew where it was because a guy had showed it to me one time. He says, Chris, if you ever want to get sober, this is a little big book group. And I remember making a mental note as I thanked him. Thank you for showing me that. And I said, I'll never go in that place, You're never going to get a date in that place. So but it was between me and my apartment that night at 6 o'clock. So I went there, and I got out of my truck in the back, and I walked in the back door, and everybody was in there laughing. Don't you hate it when you're just wanting to die, and everybody's laughing? It's like, buddy, you wouldn't be laughing so loud if you knew how bad I felt. Because it's all about me. We're like a big old ingrown hair. It's just like, hate it, laughing big loud, and I got real self-conscious, and everybody was. I don't know. I got about halfway in and pivoted around and says, I can't do it. I waved at the chairperson. I remember I'd seen him up in North Texas. I'd been up in AA for years up there. I'd seen him up in the open discussion hell, and they all had big books, and I didn't own a big book. I've been in AA 7 years and don't have a big book. That's what they were doing up in North Texas. It was all about meeting, make or make it. Hate it. 90 meetings in 90 days makes us sound like a cult. I'm going to tell you, and it's not Bill Wilson stuff, 90 meetings, that's treatment center crap. That's all that is. Y'all follow? Guys, go to as many meetings as you can go to. We're fixing to talk about it. I don't want to confuse you. This is what took me to a suicide attempt. Can y'all see that? I got a slide sometime. Don't drink and go to meetings. The cover of a Grapevine article magazine a couple of years ago. Don't drink and go to meetings. Unbelievable. Because I'm not drinking and I'm going to meetings, but then I'm drinking again. Make sense? Meetings don't treat alcoholism, folks. God treats alcoholism. Period. I'm not knocking meetings. It's a part. We're going there. these old geezers chaired the meeting, and they said, Chris, why don't we tell Chris how our lives have changed as a result of working the steps. They didn't say, let's tell Chris how we got here. I'm 7 years sitting around in Alcoholics Anonymous listening to you tell your war stories. The problem with the war stories, folks, is that every time you tell one, it lets me off the hook. Make sense? Friday night, podium, you better have a story. 12-step call, you better have a story. He ain't going to listen to you unless you tell him a little story. Y'all follow? Just sitting in a meeting, repeating your story over and over and over again, thinking the newcomer is going to benefit from it is a mistake. Fear is not going to keep us sober, friends. And every time you tell me about the DWI, I mark it off. And every time you tell me about going to prison, I mark it off. And every time you tell me about beating your wife, I mark it off. Y'all follow? That's not me. That's not me. That's not me. If we'd have connected those stories to the symptoms that we're fixing to talk about, I might have stayed, because I could have identified with that. I know that makes some of you sweaty. It's standard procedure in a meeting when a newcomer comes in. Let's tell so-and-so how we got here. I'm just saying we need to look at the effectiveness of what we're doing there. In '87, those old guys said, let's tell Chris how our lives have changed as a result of working the steps. They had my attention, because I'd never worked the steps. And they went around the room and they shared a little bit vignette of their story, and they talked about what was going on. People got their cars back, credit cards. There was one guy at the end of the table that had a license plate, an insurance, and a jack, spare and a jack, all at the same time. I mean, oh my God. How could it possibly get any better than that? I don't know. And I was listening, a little old girl at the end had a sketch pad, and she was going back to school, she's an artist, and I thought, oh my, how cool is this, that we get a chance. People email me from all over the world, you think meetings should just be pep rallies? Absolutely, that's what I think. This nonsense of wasting our time, well, who's got the problem? Big Book says we set aside one night a week for the newcomer to bring their problems. I think that's a marvelous idea. Let's give them 3 nights a week. I'm just going to draw the line. 7 nights a week, I listen to you whine about the guy in your halfway house that ate your bologna. I don't want to hear about it. Am I wrong? God, we're like a bunch of little junior therapists. Let's go fix them. And it's like, guys, I got little stickers over here. Y'all can snag them. Some of you little guys have already got them on your book. Bill Wilson, in a letter in 1942, I think, said, I got an excerpt of it, and now as Bill sees it, it says, our chief responsibility to the newcomer is an adequate presentation of the program. Did y'all get it? Our chief responsibility to the new guy is an adequate presentation of the program. This is not an adequate presentation of the program. Talking about your day is not an adequate presentation of the program. These guys, after the meeting, I picked up another desire chip, 1,000th one. And the guy said, Chris, can you sit with us for about 15, 20 minutes? Just sit with us long enough. So we need to ask you some questions. We need to try to find out why you can't stay sober. We've watched you up here for years, and you're just struggling. You're going to die if you don't get this thing. And I said, I know. I said, why can't you stay sober? Well, there's this woman. We all got it. I guarantee you, I got it. If I could crawl into your little mind right now, every one of you'd have something that you could flip out there that's making your life horrible. And I did. I had plenty. I'm blind in one eye. I'm in 7 years in therapy. I'm trained to do this. They said, Chris, this is all tragic stuff, but that's not why you can't stay sober. Let's ask you a simple question about circle triangle. Where's your book? I don't have a book. He said, here, borrow ours. And this is back in the day, some of you old geezers remember when we had the circle triangle in the front of the book. We had it for 36 years as a symbol of Alcoholics Anonymous. Bill Wilson brought it in, saw it in Norway in the 50s, early 50s. And by 1955, at our international conference, they adopted it. And they were going to put circle triangle on every conference-approved piece of literature. By 1993, there was conflict with copyright stuff. They decided that they were just going to remove the circle triangle from our literature. But again, the old timers that were using it had been using it for 36 years. And now all of a sudden we took it out of our literature. At the time I got sober in '87, it was still in there. And I drew this up here. I come from a family of world-renowned artists. Well, this sucks. I'm telling you, this is just, I'm sure sorry. I didn't absorb any of that talent from them. I got the alcoholism, but here. The circle triangle. He said, what's recovery? And I says, it's the 12 steps. Come on, guys, I'm not ignorant. I've been around for 7 years, for heaven's sakes. I haven't ever picked up a 30-day chip, but I've been around. One day at a time. It's the 12 steps. He says, have you worked the 12 steps? I said, I'm working the steps to the best of my... And he X'd it. Guys, that's code for I'm working the steps to the best of my ability means no, you haven't worked the steps. It's a yes or no question. You either have or you haven't. No. I'm like, damn. He said, what's unity? And I said, it's meetings, I guess, the fellowship. Are you meeting? Meeting makers make it. And he rolled his eyes. I'll never forget it. He had glasses on like he rolled his eyes and he gave me a check. Okay. What's service? I said, well, it's like, and he X'd it. I said, shit, at least let me answer the question. He said, Chris, you haven't worked the steps, so you don't have an awakened spirit. You got nothing to share with the newcomer. You want to tell me about emptying ashtrays? That's fine. That's not what the question is. How many people have you sponsored in 7 years? None? There you go. So you got a 3-part program to treat a 3-part illness. And you're in exactly 1 part. Folks, let me tell you something. If you're in here and you're having trouble staying sober, this is why. It ain't the group. It ain't the drama. There's only 2 reasons you'll relapse. You don't know what the problem is and you don't know what the solution is. And we're fixing to talk about both today. If you'll get off your butt and actually do the work, the miracle will take place. Guys, I'm going to tell you something. When they showed me this, I got in the car with tears in my eyes that night. I went on home. I was detoxing like a big dog. I was going to go to a meeting the next day. You'll follow, but for the first time in my life, I understood I was a real alcoholic. I wasn't borderline schizophrenic. I wasn't bipolar. I wasn't manic depressive. I wasn't all the other psychiatric disorders that the doctors have been giving me with its intending pills. I was on 7 pills a day at that time. All doctor prescribed. Everybody's trying to help me. Nobody's trying to hurt me. I'm just... Two weeks later, they've worked me through the first 4 steps. I've got a completed 4th step. I'm ready to do a 5th step. And I'm sitting on the tailgate of my truck up in North Texas, and it dawns on me that the obsession to use is lifted. That the obsession to drink and do that other outside issue stuff is gone. For the first time in my adult life, I don't want to drink. Not I'm afraid to drink. I am in a position of neutrality, and I'm not even halfway through the steps yet. Amazing. And I got to tell you something, folks. I have worked with hundreds of alcoholics and in treatment, thousands upon thousands of alcoholics who have done this and have had the same experience. This is not just my little niche of the world here. This seems to be everybody that does this work. If we could get them past everybody's opinions. I was... Patty and I were coming back from the International. We got to see some of y'all at the International out there in Atlanta last year. It was a year ago in July, and we were coming back Sunday morning. I'd had all the AA I wanted for a week. I'd been out there for a week. We're on a bus heading back to the airport, and everybody's real anonymous. They got that big hats and balloons, horns and all this kind of shit. Big tags, alcohol. It's just like, next time the AA police want to bite me about introducing myself with my last name, I'm going to remind them of the International, because it was crazy. We go sit in there, and of course I'm an old West Texas boy, and there's this nice little older lady. She comes in, she's got a little girl in tow, little I don't know, 20, 30-year-old girl. And I get up, because the bus is full, and that's what we're supposed to do. And I get up, and Patty keeps standing right there, and I'm holding on to the bar, and the lady sits down. Thank you for... And then she's talking to the girl, and she says, now listen, remember everything that we talked about this week. All you got to do, just focus. Just do 1 step a year, and you're going to be okay. And of course, I'm looking at her, and Patty's looking at me, because I'm close enough to thump the shit out of this lady's head. Bam! My mommy will thump, and come on guys, and see, some of y'all believe that that's okay. 1 step a year, I don't see except the big book says exactly opposite. We beg you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Guys, this is a race. If the obsession to use comes back, you're going to drink again. You're not going to be, oh my God, I'm hungry, angry, lonely, tired, I realize. You're not going to do that. That's ridiculous. I don't care what Living Sober says. Piece of trash. All right, that's the last time I'm going to say about it, like this. The point I want to say is, do y'all believe for a second that nice little old lady was trying to hurt that girl? No, of course not. That's why I didn't thump her. Her heart's in the right place. That's her experience. But the little newcomer, if she listens to that, if she's the real McCoy, like Bill Wilson said, Bill Wilson continues to talk about it over and over. He talks about the real alcoholic. Y'all follow? He talks about the moderate drinker, the hard drinker, and then his quote, but what about the real alcoholic? Man, you want to set somebody's hair on fire. You think introducing yourself as recovered is controversial. Introduce yourself as a real alcoholic from the podium, and I guarantee you'll get some sanctimonious idiot come up after the meeting. What are you, special? You better believe it. I'm the real McCoy. And I want to carry a message back to the other real McCoys. And what everybody else does, that's fine with me. I spent 7 years in Alcoholics Anonymous believing that if I would just go to enough meetings, I could stay sober. And I was so depressed by not being able to pull that little feet off that I tried to commit suicide in 1987. Now, folks, that's my story. And I have watched thousands of people do the same thing out of sheer frustration. If I'm telling you to work the steps quick and Jerry's telling you to work the steps slow, which one are you going to listen to? Yeah. I'm watching. Here. Anything I put up here on the board, there'll be several things I'll write up here, and there'll be two reasons. One, you can't see it, or two, you can't read it because I write so bad. Either way, if y'all email me, I got some cards over here with my little email address on there. I can email you and send you any of this information. I learned how to use Dropbox a few years back, and I'm a maniac with it. So that's just the best. I mean, Jerry can tell you, I'll just bog your inbox down. Big book stuff. Let me show you, let me show you what this looks like, though. These were stats. We had a delegate, our area delegate up in the Austin area did these, and I've seen them duplicated several times. There seems to be some I'll give you the information. You can decide. 1935, when Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob got together, to 1971, we went from 2 little knuckleheads to 500,000. Took us 36 years to get 500,000. 1971 to 1976, we went from 500,000 to 1 million. Took us 5 years. Y'all got it? This is right after the Hughes Act came about in 1971, when President Nixon signed in the Hughes Act, which allowed treatment centers to open on every damn corner. And so we started seeing a huge influx of people coming from the treatment centers, which was a good thing. 1976 to 1993, we doubled in size. We went from 1 million to 2 million. In 17 years, we doubled in size. Again, thanks to the treatment centers. We were loving on those folks. We were snagging them out of H&Is. We were bringing them into our meetings. Our membership was exploding. From 1993 to present, absolutely no growth. Guys, think about it. How long ago? Since 1993, coincidentally, when we took this out of the book, some of us believe that had more to do with it than anything, our membership's flattened. I was at the International in 2010 in San Antonio. We gave the 30th millionth copy of the Big Book to the American Medical Association, who got off dead center in 1956 and announced that that alcoholism was a disease. Thank God for that. And we gave them, and thanks for that, and understanding of that, we gave them our 30 million copies of the Big Book. And we still to this day don't have more than 2 million worldwide. Why? Why? Bill Wilson wrote, this is in an old Grapevine article back in the day when they used to print good stuff. The editorial staff changed, folks. They stopped. 1961, that was before a lot of you little knuckleheads were born. It's hard to believe, isn't it? I know. Bill Wilson wrote, though 300,000 have recovered in the last 25 years, maybe 500,000 more have walked into our midst and then out again. We can't well content ourselves with the view that all of these recovery failures were entirely the fault of the newcomers themselves. Perhaps a great many didn't receive the kind of or amount of sponsorship they so sorely needed. We didn't communicate when we might have done so, so we AAs failed them. Make sense, guys? At a certain point, I think all of us in Alcoholics Anonymous, I know I do, you're going to have to take some responsibility. Is the newcomer coming in hearing the solution or not? Because if all he's hearing is just keep coming back, He's not hearing the solution. Not the whole total picture. Those two old geezers that night that stopped me from leaving the meeting and sat me down saved my life. Had they patted me on the ass and said, we'll see you tomorrow, I wouldn't have come back. And I've watched too many people follow suit. I'm not being critical. I'm just saying a lot of us need to look at the base figures. Right now in this world, when we need this fellowship so bad and we have so many people struggling, why aren't more people staying? It's because they're not hearing the solution. I can't tell you how many people I end up working with that have been around for years dying in the rooms. That's my heart goes out to those people. Oh, did you hear about so-and-so? He was 6 years sober and he went out in the garage and shot himself. You know why? Because all he was doing was sitting in the meetings, thinking he was doing AA. He wasn't. It's a 3-part deal. Sitting in the rooms, miserable. I don't want anybody to have to do that, folks. That's what Jerry and I are going to be talking about today. This idea that we can become more effective sponsors, we can be more useful to our fellowship by getting some information, some basic stuff that we need to carry. Real quick, because I want to go and talk first step stuff. Harry Tebow, who was Bill Wilson's shrink over the years, especially when Bill was working on the 12 and 12. Tom Powers actually did the editing on that, but anyway, it's another story. He made some pretty clear points. If you get a compilation of his writings, Harry Tebow, Bill Wilson talks about him a bunch, but if you get a compilation of his writings, one of the things he talks about, and I'm going to paraphrase, I've got it in writing, if you want it I can send it to you. He says, you can hit 1,000 bottoms, but unless you surrender at one of those bottoms, you're just going to keep hitting bottoms. Any of you guys ever done that? When I told my first wife in 1981 that I was going to quit drinking, I meant it with every fiber on bended knees. I promised her that I would never take another drink. Everybody wants to laugh. Oh yeah, an alcoholic's mouth's not moving, he's lying. Eat me. That's very disrespectful to say from the podium, but I'm just going to say it again. You can bite my ass. That is not fair. You're lumping everybody in the same category. Are there some liars in AA? Yeah. Have I lied? Yes. That is not who I am. When I looked her in the face and told her that I wasn't going to drink anymore, I meant it. What I didn't understand was that I didn't have the power to manage the decision to stay stopped. If you can make a decision not to drink and do it on your own, you're not an alcoholic. Have a nice life. Make sense, guys? But if I need some other people to lean on, if I need a fellowship around me, if I need service work and I need the 12 steps to have this spiritual experience, then how cool that we have a fatal illness that we have a 100% guaranteed solution for, if we'll do it. I'm going to tell you something, folks. 7 years in Alcoholics Anonymous, I didn't know what alcoholism was. I knew the stories. Y'all follow? I knew all the drama, but I didn't understand the symptoms of alcoholism. Those guys that night in 1987, they explained to me what the symptoms look like. And I go, oh my God. They didn't talk about the story. They just talked about the symptoms. Bill Wilson, I've got some handouts up here. Y'all don't rush up and get them right now. It's distracting. If y'all come up on this side, I won't be able to see you anyway, but it's okay. Maybe y'all can sneak up the back. If they come up on this side, you stop them. I know, get them. I got another one up here I'll give you later this afternoon because I don't want to put it out because it'll confuse you. But these right here, these are some little handouts that we did, and one of them is a little outline of the steps, real simple. There's some complicated outlines out there. This is one we did years ago for little new guys that we're working with. And if you want to know where the first step is, I've got it documented on here. This from the doctor's opinion up to page 23. Bill Wilson's talking about the physical craving. What happens when I put that stuff in my system? Why is it that I can't guarantee you how much I'm going to drink every time? That wires us different. Make sense? From 23 to 43, we talk about the mental obsession. And if you can see that, when a guy comes in and says, can you sponsor me? I don't care if he's just got out of treatment or if he's just walked in off the street. I'm going to sit with him just like those old geezers did to me that night. And I'm going to ask him. I'm not going to say start reading. I'm going to get him a book and say start reading. I'll give him that. But I'm going to say right now let's cherry pick this because I'm going to move you through here. Because my job as a sponsor, my foremost job as a sponsor is to qualify you. I'm a member if I say I am. Yes, you are if you say you are a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. You are not an alcoholic unless you are. Make sense? Guys, we got a lot of people coming through the room, and we got alcoholics, we got drug addicts, we got combination jobs, and we need to find out which rooms that we can get them in. If I find out this guy's a garden variety textbook dope fiend and he's never had a problem with alcohol, I happen to know a bunch of people in Drug Addicts Anonymous or Cocaine Anonymous, I don't know, but there's a gazillion, over 300 12-step fellowships out there today, and I got lists of all of those, and I can send them. Make sense? It's one of the problems that we got for years, is we had a whole bunch of people hiding out in AA that weren't alcoholics. The sad part is they're not staying sober because they're not in the room where they can identify with the other stories. Does that make sense? It grinds some of you. It just grinds some of you. You know why? Because I'm asking you to look at something that you've neatly put asleep maybe years ago. Now I'm asking you to open this back up and at least look at the symptoms so that you can explain this to the newcomer. My bottom was not listening to you talk about waking up next to it an armadillo. That's not my bottom. My bottom wasn't eating out of dumpsters in Houston, Texas, which I did. My bottom was a clear understanding for the first time what alcoholism looked like. They saved my life. I've seen a lot of people in and out, in and out, in and out. When they finally see this, they get sober. Y'all follow? I got a guy, and he's working on his 4-step, and he keeps dragging his feet, and he won't get it done. You know why? Because he doesn't believe he needs to do it. Because he doesn't understand the first step. If he understood the first step, he'd have a rocket strapped to his ass. You know, he'd be knocking on your door. Hey, I need to get this done. What are you doing? He'd be driving you crazy trying to get this work done. So, ain't it the truth? This is quick and fast. Dr. Bob talks about this physical Bill Wilson and those guys, the first one, they talk about this physical phenomenon of craving. Guys, your body doesn't care what shape the alcohol is in. One of the problems that we see today in recovery land is a lot of people get accidentally, inadvertently triggered by the physical response. I haven't had a beer in 20 years, but I eat some veal marsala that's got loaded with booze in it. Y'all follow? 20 years ago, I could eat it and it wouldn't have triggered the craving, but because my illnesses continue to progress, it triggers the craving. Over-the-counter medications, prescription medication, a lot of this stuff we have to watch because there's a lot of things that can trigger that craving. Y'all can understand the progression of the illness. There are people in here whose illness, stop looking at this chronologically. Y'all look at these old geezers like Jim and you say, well, God, he's nearly dead. You know, he's like an old geezer. It's like, no. We got some young people in here, I guarantee you, some of you young buckaroos in here whose illness has progressed way past where Jim's has progressed today. You can't look at this chronologically by years or by age. What you got to look at we could do a study, we could look at the blood work, we could kind of get a pretty good idea. But the noose around the young people's neck is they think, well, I'll wait till if I ever get as bad as that old one-eyed sumbitch, I'll quit, you know. That's why the number one death rate in Alcoholics Anonymous today is the college-age kid, young people. You can't tell how far this illness has progressed. Your body, as the illness progresses, will become more sensitized to alcohol. Y'all ever seen anybody on the street drinking? They're not walking around with a case of Bud. They're walking around with one little bottle in their back pocket, and they take it out and take a couple of sips and go to sleep because their bodies have become so sensitized to the alcohol. Make sense? Anything that you put in your system with alcohol in it can trigger the phenomena called craving. All right. That doesn't make it fatal. That just means at this point, it's like you're allergic to something. Make sense? Anybody in here allergic to anything? What are you allergic to? Duck? And fur? He just threw me completely off. I don't know. I've been asking that question for years on the podium. I've never had anybody. All right. So you do everything you can to stay away from the dust and the fur. Yes. Come on, let's say shellfish. Let's say shellfish. I can't do that. Let's say you're allergic to shellfish. You're right. So you eat a couple of shellfish, it makes you sick. You eat it again, it makes you sick. You say, oh my God, I'm allergic to shellfish. I can't. So you stay away from shellfish. You'll follow? We don't have to go in your room and look under the bed and see there's a bushel of shellfish under there. We just, maybe some of you do. I don't know. Physical. Knowing this, though, that I can't drink alcohol, then that should be enough. Common sense would tell you, if you can't drink it normally, then quit drinking it. Y'all follow? But when you couple it with this mental obsession, this is the piece that makes it fatal. And you either got it or you don't. The question is this. Given sufficient reason, the book says, ill health, falling in love, change of wife, warning from a doctor, if any of this stuff changes, can you stop or moderate? So the question is, knowing that you're allergic to it, knowing that this stuff is causing you problems, can you stop and stay stopped? Well, you hear it. Well, I can stop for periods of time. I can too. I can stop for weeks. I can stop for months at a time. But the problem is that the mind will all of a sudden start rationalizing and justifying why it's okay to put it back in your system. My buddy DJ says, at what point does I change my mind qualify as insanity? You'll follow? You get out of treatment, you spent $60,000 for treatment, you get a whole bunch of time out of your life, you get out, you're on rock solid ground, I'm never going to drink again. And 2 weeks later, you're drunk. What happened? The obsession came back. Y'all follow? I got to show you something. Turn to page 24 real quick. There's a couple of secret handshakes in this book, and this is the page. I don't know why this is so controversial in our own fellowships, but it is. Page 24, italicized on the top. Y'all make sure you mark it. I got a little rubber stamp. I'll stamp your little books later if you want me to, a little circle triangle back on the page where it used to be if you're interested. But I'm going to flip over to 24, and if you don't have this marked, I'm not going to stamp your book. Guys, this is important to tell the newcomer. That's why I'm asking you. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory and suffering and humiliation of maybe a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. It didn't say every time. It said at some times. We can't bring into the forefront of our mind. Y'all follow? I got guys leave treatment and they'll put a picture of their kids. I don't need to work those 12 steps. I'm going to put pictures of my kids on the refrigerator, and every time I open that door, I'll know that I don't want it. Buddy, rock on. How's that? That's a great idea, you loser. It ain't going to work. It ain't that you don't love your kids. Y'all understand? No. I hear people in meetings all the time. I got up this morning and chose not to drink. Good for you, not me. I got up this morning and chose to stay in the fellowship. I got up this morning and chose to continue to stay active in the 12 steps. To answer the phone with the guys when they call me. That's what I chose to do this morning. Otherwise, you're in trouble. There's a commentator that's still on TV a whole bunch. He went to treatment years and years ago, back in the 90s, and he always introduces himself as recovering, which drives me crazy. He's on TV with Larry King. This is back in the day when Larry King was on there. He's on TV, and this guy says, this is back when Lindsay was having trouble. Little Hollywood girls were all having trouble staying sober, and it was all over in every newspaper. And every time one of them would show their butt again, it was all over the news and everything. Anyway, this commentator says, but what gets me about these celebrity folks is, hey, we have a choice whether we're going to drink or not. Just get up and make the choice not to drink. It's that simple. Millions of people got to hear that crap. Make sense? It ain't nothing you can do. I mean, he wants to do it. Yeah, he's a member of our fellowship. Idiot. Killing people with that crap. Ask yourself the questions, guys. I got this little target right here. You can hit this little target 1,000 times. Here's this little happy. Y'all know the time, the little place you get to where you know exactly how much you need to drink and everything's fine. I know how much alcohol, some of that outside issue stuff I can add in there with. I know exactly what I can put in my system to be happy, happy, happy. Y'all follow? And if I could just drink that today, I'd go get a bud. No, I wouldn't. I'd be a lone star, but I was never a Budweiser fan. But anyway, you can hit this little target, and this is what normal people can do. I watched my little sister one time get sick at a sorority party, and I'm holding her little head, and she's puking her guts, and she says, I am never going to do that again. And she's never done that again. Come on, guys, how many times have I done that? How many times have I gone to the bathroom and puked my guts out? Walked back in the bar, and must have been the chicken. Or the case of beer you had before the chicken. I don't know. But y'all know that this is what happens. This is what your families don't understand. They think you can reel this thing back in. You make a deal, you get in trouble, and you start hitting outside the target a little bit, and all of a sudden you reel it back in. This is when you get your little butt chewed, and it's okay, I'm going to reel it back in. You hit it like there for a couple weeks, and all of a sudden, it's like, holy wait, y'all follow? I'll stop. You come back in here, you're hitting the target, you're reeling it back in. I can only have 3. I can only have 3 beers. That's all I'm going to drink tonight, 3 beers. We'll make sure. Y'all, yeah. 2 weeks later. We're so not even on this, like, holy what happened? Well, it was that girl. If I hadn't been with that girl, and we start making excuses for all the crazy, stupid shit. It was the work. It was the job. I hear guys all the time. It's that oil field, man. It's that oil field. That's horse shit. It's alcoholism. I know too many people that are sober in the oil fields kicking butt. Please. Get out there and then we reel it back in again. Ultimately, what happens is we end up croaking, folks. Dr. Carlton Erickson out of University of Texas believes 60% of this is genetic. Real quick, I'll let my friend Jerry get up here. When I put alcohol out of my system, any of those outside issues out of my system, one of the hardest pieces we were talking earlier for our families to understand is that why some of us don't get better. When you take alcohol away from me, I will get better for a period of time. I get my checkbook balanced, I get the truck washed, I clean out from under the seats. Oh my God, look at this. Everything looks, I should have done this years ago. I just feel everybody's complimenting. God dang, you look good. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's pretty good. 2 weeks in for me. It's different for all, depending on the progression of the illness. It's different. You'll be driving driving down the road, and all of a sudden somebody flipping them off, and whoa, a little irritable, restless, and discontent. Y'all follow? Sober? No. Dry as the desert sand. You're out, on 52, the Bedema. Trouble in personal relationships, prey to misery and depression, no self-esteem, that feeling of uselessness is what the book is saying. Misery, that this stuff starts to come back. Guys, you take the alcohol away from me, and I inevitably will end up 2 weeks, 3 weeks out in a 7-Eleven, standing in front of the cooler, trying to make a decision what I'm going to do. I've done it 1,000 times. Grab a Dr. Pepper. You could probably have 1 beer. What's 1 beer going to hurt? No. Sometimes I drink 1 beer and then I drink a whole bunch of beers. I don't want... What are you, a pussy? No. Put the Dr. Pepper back, grab a beer. Put the beer back. Grab a quart. We didn't have them big old can beers. I don't know how in the hell y'all drink them big can beers like that. How do you drive with one of those big cans like that? I don't know. That was terrible. I shouldn't have said that. Grab a quart, walk up there. Y'all follow? Just send me in I just send the guys up there with a stupid scratch off, or this, that, and the other. You go ahead, buddy. Rock on. Good luck. If he'd have done that this morning, I'd have killed him. Y'all follow? That's why they call this a quick fill. Hurry up, asshole. Let's go. We got to go. I got a beer in my hand and everything's fine. Everything's calmed down. Y'all follow? Get in the truck. Haven't even opened it. Oh, listen to that. Carole King. I just love Carole. Oh my God. It's just like I'm on another warp. Everything's okay. Except the cravings kicked in. And that night I stopped and buy a 6-pack on the way home. And I'm off to the stupid races again. Y'all follow? I didn't choose to grab that quart. I was insane when I got that court. The most insane thing you guys did, you didn't do it impaired. The most insane thing you did stone cold sober. You picked up a new one. Y'all got it? Pretty cool. My friend Jerry. You need that? All right.
Hi, y'all. I'm Jerry Green. I'm very
Hey, buddy.
recovered alcoholic.
Let me get my coffee.
So cool to be here. Thanks, Chris, for coming down. Thank all y'all for getting this together. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about step 2 and some about step 3. Step 2 was totally misunderstood by me when I got to these rooms. I was a year and a half coming in and out before I got sober. And step 2 says I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. And for some reason, that's not exactly how I read that. That's not exactly how I read that. I read it, I've got to fully define and comprehend and understand God before I can move on with these steps. And there's a lot of you guys that I know that have felt the same way about it. Step 2 says I came to believe. Doesn't say I have to believe right now. Pretty much the whole part of step 2 that's important, and this is how, and again, like Chris said, this is how I was took through the steps, and this is how I take people through the steps. And if it doesn't match what you're doing, cool. But all I know is how to do it the way I've done it, and so that's what I'm going to talk about. Step 2 is boiled down to one sentence on page 47. It says, do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe that there's a power greater than myself? This book says that half of the people didn't have a problem with God when they got here. So that means half of them did. If I ask you that question and you tell me you believe or you're willing to believe, then we're moving right on to step 3, because that's enough said. This book also says that we don't need to, and we're incapable of fully defining and comprehending God. It doesn't mean that I sit on my butt trying to figure out God, look for him. I got news for you, he's not lost. It means that for the first time in my life, I acknowledge that there is something out there bigger than me, and it ain't me. You know? I love Alcoholics Anonymous because everything's crystal clear in Alcoholics Anonymous. You get here, you get qualified by a sponsor, you either are an alcoholic or you're not. It's crystal clear. You either admit that stuff and have that first step experience, or you don't. You know, you're either willing to believe there's something out there bigger than you, or you're not. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on that when I'm working with somebody, because here's the deal. If I've done a good first step and I've had a first step experience and I've been beat down bad enough by alcohol and some of that other stuff, then I'm going to be willing to believe there's something out there bigger than me. I've got no choice. It all comes back to that first step. And if I don't believe that, if I'm so arrogant and I'm so full of myself that I'm not willing to think about it or open my mind up just a little bit, then I probably need to go back out there and get beat down some more by alcohol or outside issues. I mean, that sounds hard, but it's absolutely the fact. It's not my job as a sponsor to try to talk you into this deal. Now, I got to remember that this book was written in 1939, and I got to remember the purpose of this book. They wrote this book because already, after a couple of 3 years, people were starting to get a little bit off the page. It was going from person to person to person, and the message was kind of getting diluted. So they got together and they wrote this book, and it went through the group conscience of the first 100 recovered alcoholics. And I got to remember when I'm reading this book what that purpose was. They got this book and they mailed it all over the country to alcoholics who were sitting out there by themselves, without an AA group, without sponsorship, without anything. And he wrote a beautiful chapter in here. They wrote a beautiful chapter called We Agnostics. And it's got a lot of good information in it. But when we're working through the steps, I'm not going to insist that you read and understand We Agnostics. I'm going to ask you one simple question. Are you willing to believe there might be something out there bigger than you? It's just that simple. There's a lot of good stuff in We Agnostics, and I encourage everybody to read it. But the bottom line, it's like Chris said, it's a race. We're trying to get you through this deal before that obsession returns. You've been qualified. You understand the 3 parts of the disease. Now, are you willing to believe there's something out there bigger than you? If you are, let's move on. It's just that simple. Step 2 is not a lengthy process. Step 3 takes a little bit longer, not much, but there's some really important information on step 3. On page 60 of the book, they summed up the first 60 pages with 3 ideas. I love it the way it's written in the original manuscript. In this book it says we're trying to make clear 3 pertinent ideas. In the original manuscript it said it's been designed to sell you 3 ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought. Right under that, there's a sentence. It says, being convinced we were at step 3. But if you flip on over to page 63, right in the middle of the page, it says we were now at step 3. So there's obviously some information from when we think we're at step 3 to when we're ready for step 3. And that information is on these 2.5 pages. I love how he does this. He says, being convinced we were at step 3, which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood him. Just what do we mean by that, and just what do we do? Listen, guys, the step doesn't say I turned my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood him. If it did, then I would do that, and I would tell you, you need to do that, and we'd go home. I have no idea how to turn my will and my life over to the care of God, and I certainly don't know how to tell you to do it. But I do know that 100% of the time, if you work these steps and work all the way through step 9, your will and your life gets turned over to the care of God as you understand him. And I do know that if you continue to live in steps 10, 11, and 12, it stays there. I also know if you quit doing the steps, you lose that. So my first sponsor explained to me a lot of what I'm doing here is agreeing to go ahead and go through the rest of the steps in step 3. But there's some good information here. It says, just what do we mean by that, and just what do we do? The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. I always ask my guys, have you been running your life on self-will? Yeah. Would you call it successful? No. So that sentence wrote in 1937, 1938 is true today. How'd they know? On that basis, we're almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. See, and I love that. Everybody wants to write the alcoholic and the addict off as, oh, they're just bad people. Oh, they're not capable of anything good. Guys, I had some good motives when I was out there drinking. I had some good motives. I wanted some things to happen for my kids, for my family, for my people I was working with. I had some good motives, but it never worked out. Good motives aren't enough. It says, each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show. And I always ask them, what's wrong with that sentence? You know, an actor isn't supposed to run the show. Can you imagine a Hollywood movie if all the actors just decided they were going to do everything the way they wanted it? It wouldn't turn out very good. You know, and that's how I lived the first 51 years of my life. I woke up every morning, and without God, and this is still true today, without God, the way I feel is the most important thing in the world to me, and nothing else matters, because that's just how selfish and self-centered I am. And I woke up that way the first 51 years of my life, and it was like sticking your finger up, seeing which way the wind was blowing. How do I feel today? Well, I feel like I need to make some money. So I set about trying to manipulate and control everybody and everything around me so I could make some money. Well, I think I need this. Well, I think I need that. I feel like this. All that mattered was how I felt. And I set about trying to, and sometimes, hey, I feel like, the kids need a new pair of shoes. Cool. Except the way I went around it, the way I went about it, was I manipulated and did everything I could to get it just the way I wanted it. It had to be just the way I wanted it. I wanted to run the whole show. Each person's like an actor who wants to run the whole show. Is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. If his arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. You ever think that? You ever feel that way? If you just get behind what I'm trying to do over here, and if you just do what I want over here, and if you just do what I want over here, then this thing will work out and it's all going to be awesome. If you haven't had that feeling, I don't know why you're here. 'Cause that's a definite big one, If I can just get this fixed over here and get this fixed over here. It says, in trying to make these arrangements, our actor may sometimes be quite virtuous. He may be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. Guys, I could do that. See, here's what it says. It says, even if my motives are good and I'm being kind and considerate, I'm still screwing up. That was hard for me to swallow when I got here. Because I've been raised my whole life, if you got good motives and you're being kind to people, you're going to be okay. No, I was being kind to people so I could get what I wanted, so I could run the show. And then it says, on the other hand, he may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. That's how I usually was if being nice didn't work. But as most humans, he's more likely to have varied traits. What usually happens, the show doesn't come off very well. He begins to think life doesn't treat him right. You ever been there? Oh, if they'd only listen to me. Oh, I don't know why all this stuff always happens to me, why it never works out. And I am so convinced when I get here, I am so convinced that I'm right about this stuff. And if you just listen to me, the if only disease. And it kind of goes back to this little issue man dude. If only I had this, if only I had that, if only they'd done this, if only they'd listened. I have the if only disease. I've had it my whole life. If only I had that bicycle. If only I had that girl. If only I didn't have that girl. If only I had this. He decides to exert himself more. He becomes on the next occasion still more demanding or gracious, as the case may be. Still the play does not suit him. Admitting he may be somewhat at fault, well, maybe I did that wrong. He is sure that other people are more to blame. Then I love this sentence. This sentence sums me up. He becomes angry, indignant, self-pitying. That's exactly what happens. Because I got all this stuff planned and it doesn't work out the way I want it to. And by God, you didn't do what I told you to do and everything. And I'm going to get angry. I'm going to get angry as hell. And then after that, I'm going to get indignant. I knew what was best. If only they'd have listened to me. And then I'm going to get self-pitying. If only they'd have done what I told them, this would be all right. Now here I am in jail, Never mind, I drove my truck into a bar ditch. And, And it goes on. But the last sentence of this paragraph always floors me. And it's a real good measuring stick to how I'm living my life today. It says, is he not, even in his best moments, a producer of confusion rather than harmony? So here's the deal, guys. I get everybody lined up, and my family loved me, and my friends loved me. And I'd set up trying to manipulate and get this stuff all set up, and they'd try to make me happy. They'd try to please me. And sometimes if it did work out, that was cool for about 5 minutes till I decided I wanted something else. And then I told them, well, that's not exactly what I wanted. Let's go over here and do this. And then, they tried to work with me for years and tried to helped me get what I wanted for years, and every time I got it, I wasn't happy. So I produced confusion in them. They were confused. You know, after we do that for so long with our families and our friends and the people that know us, they get sick of messing with us. And then we wonder, oh, what's the deal, you know? And the whole time they've been trying to cater to my every whim, and nothing's worked, and I want something else, and they get confused. And that can happen in my life today. If I'm not getting up every morning, getting connected to God, getting on my knees, doing that third step prayer, taking the actions necessary in this program, then I'll be out there, and how I feel will become the most important thing again, and I'll be producing confusion in the people around me. It absolutely will come back and do that. That's why I have to do these steps. I have to take the actions and stay connected. Then it comes over here to the first paragraph in page 62. Boy, I hated this paragraph when I got here. It says, selfishness and self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. See, I was pretty convinced that alcohol and those outside issues were the root of my troubles. I was not convinced that I was selfish. It says, driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. We step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. 100 forms of fear. Fear's all about living in the future, and I'm scared I'm not going to get what I want. I'm scared things are not going to turn out the way I want, and I'm scared somebody's going to take away something I have. You know, self-delusion, that's about lying to myself and believing it. That's about thinking I have the power to run the show if everybody will do what I want. I can drink only 3 beers this time. I can handle this. I can handle that. I'm driven by that stuff. Self-seeking. I want. Self-pity. I didn't get it. Can you relate? It says, sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find, that means always, guys, we invariably find that sometime in the past we've made decisions based on self which later placed us in a position to be hurt. That's hard to look at. I didn't think that. I'll tell you a story real quick. I had a buddy of mine 3 or 4 years ago in Andrews, and he's explaining to me that his wife was out running around with the dope guy cheating on him, you know, and he was mad. He was mad at him, and I'm like, do you have a part in that? Did you make a decision based on self? No. I said, okay. Was she an addict when you met her? Yes, but she was beautiful. Yeah. Maybe you made a decision based on self there, dude. I mean, it's what we do, you know? It's what we do. It's exactly what we do. And it says, so our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. That hurts. Nobody wants to hear that. They arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. And then it says, above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of alcohol. Oh, wait, no, that's not what it said. See, and I thought that. When I got here, I thought, man, if I can just get rid of the alcohol, my life's going to be okay. But it's not. It's just like Chris said, take the alcohol away from me and don't give me the solution, and I get crazy. It gets worse. I can't handle it. It says above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. And then I love this. This book is meant to be suggestive only, guys. Listen to this sentence. We must or it kills us. That's pretty plain. That's pretty plain. God makes that possible. There seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without His aid. Many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore. Buddy, I was the most judgmental, still can be sometimes, And I had all these, I'd never do that. I'd never do that. You know what? When I started out in my little career, I didn't do that. Yet sooner or later, I'd drink enough or do enough of something where I did do that. And every one of those little moral fence posts I set up, I went past them. You know? But guess what? I'd still judge you for doing that stuff. But I'm special, you know, don't you know? And I couldn't live up to them. And you know why? Because I didn't have any power. I needed power. Anything I have good in my life today, anything I say good today, anything that happens good in my life today, I realize is God's. Anything I have is not mine, it's God's. He's just loaning it to me. Without God, I'm still that same alcoholic that I always was. I'm still selfish and self-centered to the core. And I've got to have God in my life every day. And that's what this is about. This third step is all about surrender. You know, and it's not, I'm sorry guys, it's not asking you to surrender your alcohol problem to this power. It's asking you to surrender to this power. There's a huge difference. I can't compartmentalize my life. I can't be over here and surrender my alcohol and I'm going to hang on to this and this and this and this and this. It doesn't work. You know, I had a real hard time. I had a little business and everything. I had a real hard time when I first started the program. And I asked my sponsor, where do I draw the line between business and program? And he just laughed at me. There is no line. My whole life has to be lived on a spiritual basis today. My whole life I have to be accountable to people. I have to be transparent. I don't have the power to do that on my own. I have to surrender to God every day. And then I have to step out and try to do what God wants me to do. How do I know what God wants me to do? It's really simple. It's an old cliche, and I hate cliches, but it's the next right thing. You know, for me, the next right thing isn't getting out on the highway and throwing trash out of my truck anymore, which I used to do all the time. For me, the next right thing isn't going to Walmart, loading all my stuff up there and leaving that shopping cart sitting out in the parking lot. Y'all have all heard me say that. I got to put the shopping cart back in the parking place. Maybe grab another one. You know, the next right thing isn't for me to stand at the Stripe store while everybody's buying lottery tickets and I'm Mr. Important and I'm in a big hurry. I got to get to work and all that. And, you know, I used to be furious by the time I got to that counter. And I just be, you know, today I try to just stand there and maybe have a little talk with God in my brain, you know, and get there and the lady behind the counter, maybe ask her how she's doing and act like I really care, you know. And sometimes I find that I do really care. But that brings me to another good point, guys. You can act your way right into this deal. If you don't